You're listening to the For ClimateTech series on the Forward Faster podcast, providing bite-sized insights for climate tech innovators.
Hello and welcome for the For ClimateTech podcast powered by Forward Faster. I'm Jacqueline Ros Amable, Managing Director with Venture for ClimateTech. With me today is Kate Moore. So excited to have you. Kate manages strategic partnerships with the National Renewable Energy Labs Innovation and Entrepreneurship Center and is on the Venture for ClimateTech board. Prior to this role, Kate co-founded and managed the Wells Fargo Innovation Incubator program, in addition to an impressive career ranging from Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. to Colorado supporting various clean tech initiatives. Welcome, Kate. Congratulations on another successful conference at NREL's Industry Growth Forum.
Thank you, Jackie. Thanks so much for having me. I'm looking forward to our discussion today and talking about all the great things that took place last week at the forum, including an exciting announcement.
It was. And I really, I know our founders enjoyed that. Kate, there's so much I want to ask you, but let's start with, how are you doing now that the Industry Growth Forum has concluded?
You know, there's always this collective sigh of relief, I think, half of the team, because the Growth Forum is this massive effort, and it really is all hands on deck. And so we're really excited about this year's outcome. It was one of our largest ever, with 600 plus attendees. But I think, we're glad to kind of move on to the next phase and plan next year's event, because really it's like a 6-month program culminating in a 2-3 day event. So planning is just around the corner for the next one.
I was going to say, this being the second conference entirely virtual, but with a lot more lead time than last year. What do you think are some of the major wins for your team?
Yeah, I think, last year we made the decision 5 or 6 weeks ahead of the forum to go virtual. So that was a flurry of activity. We learned a lot between now and then. And the team really came together in terms of making sure that all of the elements that we find so important to pull off at the Growth Forum, which is pulling together the investment and startup communities for those connected one-on-one meetings, facilitating that engagement and just making sure that it all goes off without a hitch. But in a virtual setting, it's all about production. I mean, I think, a lot more effort than one may realize when it's a virtual conference. So my hat goes off to all my fellow colleagues and organizations that are going through the same fun. I will leave it at that. Virtual events are fun.
The amount of ops behind a virtual event is no joke, and it was a great event. So definitely hats off to your team. For some founders who, maybe were hesitant to attend the forum this year, what do you think is the biggest benefit for them to consider when deciding to attend next year? And is there too early a stage of a company to attend?
Yeah, great questions. I think, the Growth Forum is a wonderful platform to get plugged into the clean energy ecosystem, no matter where you are in your stage of development. The primary objective of the Growth Forum is to connect motivated investors with startups that are seeking financing investment. But having, the ability to begin those conversations early on is really important, so that when you are ready to make that big ask, you have some relationships to turn to and start with. So, obviously in a virtual setting, you can't have those hallway chit chat conversations that are so valuable. But, we've already planned to have next year's event in person. So that will not be a problem. And hopefully connections made this year virtually will kind of flow into next year, in addition to new people to meet as well.
And I know our team loved meeting with a whole bunch of different teams and folks. And, I think people do underestimate, how long it takes to build strong relationships. I mean, that's at the crux of what you do, right? So that's great to hear. And I think some good advice. You can never start to build those relationships too early. I knew my main investors for a while and kind of kept sending them that data before they pulled the trigger and funded me. So I think that really resonates. So now to kind of, switch to a completely different kind of question, right? So it was really great to hear about the conference. We loved being there. Now to talk about some of more NREL's work generally. Something that we think a lot about at Venture for Climate Tech is equity and the communities that are impacted. As we all know, the effects of climate change will be disproportionately felt by communities of color and with the lowest contributions to emissions. How is NREL working to source and support innovations from diverse communities, addressing those disproportionate effects?
Yeah, NREL has been doing this work for a long time, and we're really excited that, there's so much focus and emphasis in the broader clean energy ecosystem now. I would say, we have a history and track record of supporting communities, that are affected on the coasts in terms of, needing to find, to relocate and helping them figure out what best geographical focuses and energy solutions make sense to help with that transformation. So I would say we have a deep, enriched history in this space, and we're really looking forward to, discovering all new technology solutions that can further, bring climate justice, climate equity to the forefront of all that we do.
And I do think that a lot of people, I remember in my early getting to know NREL days, there's sometimes people don't really fully understand everything NREL does. And I remember this sort of funny story that some students didn't really quite understand what the tests were on top of a mountain in Colorado, right? In the work that you all were doing, and those texts accidentally got disturbed, and it was just NREL does such a breadth of research and discovery, and it must be tricky to communicate that out to everybody and to catch up on that history. As Phil who was at NREL for 14 years is in our program, and he was even telling me some of the history of his time there and how much it's evolved. And so NREL does have such a rich history, and I don't think people realize how long of a standing of an institution and the work that NREL has done. So that's a great point. And makes a lot of sense with the coast, even though, based in Golden, but that's great to hear. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, we certainly work, on a global basis that I think people are unfamiliar with. You equate a national lab with being solely focused on the US economy, which we are in terms of, innovation here, but we assist global leaders in emerging and developed countries, help figure out how to get to 100% renewable energy, organizations, stakeholder groups. So we have a number of projects that I think people would be surprised that we have been involved in. And you can check out our website to learn more always.
That's awesome. In the climate, as you say, the climate tech space, right? It's getting very, it's not to say, it feels like very punny to say it's getting hot, but it's getting hot. And, we're seeing in this landscape an influx of new investors and new kinds of investors who didn't traditionally invest in these technologies before. We had a speaker come and speak to our founders about sort of the climate curious versus the climate specialists, right? People that have been in this work 20 years and folks who are like, this is a massive crisis, this is the time, and I'm going to shift my energies this way. And I was curious if you guys had seen a similar trend for investors who attended the NREL Industry Growth Forum.
Absolutely. We, I think, had of our investors, 180 of them this year attended. And I think over 50 of them were new to the Growth Forum in general, which is really exciting. So, we certainly have our tried and true investors that have been with us almost from the beginning. And, we're around for the first clean tech boom bust cycle. But I think, the opportunity is so big now, and the problems are so grave that there are just a whole new wave of investors across all asset classes that are kind of getting involved and jumping into this space, which is great. I don't think in the history of the world there's ever been more capital available, and thankfully that's the case because we need it in order to transform our energy system into the net zero climate ecosystem that we need.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And you mentioned this earlier, and I meant to ask this before. You're seeing these different trends, you're seeing these different outcomes. It's really exciting to see this influx of energy and capital. Obviously predicting next year is very difficult in the era of COVID. But what are some of your hopes or goals for next year's forum?
Well, definitely hope it will be in person because, as effective as I think we were able to pull off the virtual forum this year, those in-person engagements are just so critical. The networking not only takes place between the startups and investors, but also amongst the entrepreneurs and founders, and likewise on the investor side. There's great value in bringing together the broader investment community. A week before the Growth Forum, we actually held a town hall with our investor network on SPACs and what that means, and got into real deep discussions. And we got lots of great feedback around, we don't have the ability to have these community-wide discussions, and thank you for putting this together. And we hope to do more, I guess, virtually and in person, because now that we've done it virtually, we've proven that we can make it valuable and interactive and effective for all parties involved in solving, sharing knowledge, networking, making sure that everyone's kind of aware of what's going on, and all that good stuff in terms of what makes an ecosystem healthy and able to accomplish all of our lofty goals together.
Kate, as we look forward, right, I think we have lots of reasons to be optimistic, but what is giving you hope right now?
Yeah, it's spring. So I always feel like hope is in the air at this time of year. Also what coincided last week with the Growth Forum was Earth Day. And with that comes a whole bunch of, exciting announcements. I think, one of the biggest coming from the White House for President Biden, wanting to reduce global greenhouse gas emissions, by 50% by 2030. So that's hugely ambitious, and more ambitious than President Obama. And I think kind of sets the North Star and gives us our marching orders, both as a federal, system, as well as in the private sector too. So that was quite exciting. And I just think, the influx of players and organizations that are getting into the climate tech space, more incubators to support entrepreneurs, more people wanting to sign up to work for startups, which I think is, needed and scary, but the amount of resources available is, we're at a unique time in history. And I think now is the time. If you ever wanted to jump into the space, do it, because you'll be supported across the innovation spectrum. And, one of the announcements from the Growth Forum came from the Breakthrough Energy group. They just launched their Fellows program, which seeks to provide, considerable resources to inventors to help them overcome those early gaps, to get them out of the lab and into, a place where they can be invested in, or, acquired or whatever. And it's that amount of capital, that amount of resources, that amount of ambition that's really needed to move early stage innovations. But I'd also, like to obviously point to the great announcement of the Venture for ClimateTech inaugural cohort. All shots on goal is, as many shots on goal as what we need, and being the top of the funnel, bringing in those early stage innovators. I got firsthand a chance to see your class, and I was really excited and moved by the talent that's driving these innovations. So lots of hope, Jackie.
That's awesome to hear. So fast forward 10 years, Kate, how do you think the climate tech landscape will have changed, and who are the key players? Where do you hope to be in this?
That is a great question. I think in 10 years, hopefully we will have kind of nailed a lot of the questions that we are currently asking ourselves. I mean, in order to reach a net zero economy by 2050. That means that we need to curb US emissions between 57 and 63% over the next decade. So that means we have a lot of work to do in the next 10 years. So, I foresee us figuring out, obviously, our energy storage, long duration, all of that has been solved for. In terms of electrofuels, hydrogen, we have a thriving, infrastructure and distribution system, and we know how to use it most effectively and efficiently. I think we'll have solved for a lot of some of those key pieces. Carbon capture, I think we'll still be working on. Hopefully, we'll be making some major segue there. But yeah. I'm hopeful in terms of what we can accomplish. I think, Bill Gates, what did he said that he's most hopeful it comes from his belief in innovation. Our power to invent makes him hopeful. And I think that makes me hopeful too. So.
That's awesome to hear, and a vision I can get really excited about. But where do you hope to be in all that in 10 years?
Yeah, I hope to be in the middle of all of it. I think, I've had the advantage of being there for the last 10 years, kind of having a front row seat to innovation, seeing technologies coming out of the lab, seeing us support early to mid-stage technologies, working with investors and corporates and industry to get technologies deployed. So hopefully I get to kind of see the full gamut further along.
Thank you, Kate, so much for joining us. It's been so great to get to know you a little bit better and get to know NREL a little bit better, and to share NREL's incredible community with our community. And just thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Jackie.